Ah, I just feel so much better always knowing I'm backed up with James and John up here. I don't normally do this one. This is normally Ronnie's territory. She's normally here I'm often out in Colorado and long gone. You're not so lucky this year. I'm going to stick around. In fact, for at least I'll be here next week, right? So I had to put it all together today, right? Independence. I'm a great believer that when you've got a holiday coming up, you celebrate on the Sunday prior, because by the Sunday after, they don't care. So we've got 4th of July coming up. I had a friend in Australia, and she's Australian. She's been living all over the place. She was in Turkey last. But in any case, I sent off an email and started to say, yes, we're going to be celebrating the 4th of July. And then I added our Independence Day. It suddenly occurred to me that in the rest of the world, the 4th of July is like, okay, great. We're celebrating tomorrow, huh? Yes, it's a good idea. But we in this country, the 4th of July is very special to us. We're celebrating the founding of our nation, the United States of America. And it began with the signing of the Declaration of Independence, which, yes, they signed at the bottom. Yeah, she's hiding now. So they signed on July 4th, 1776. The story of the American Revolution is it's one of the stories of, maybe one of the first of major dependent colonies, essentially successfully throwing off the shackles of colonialism. Okay. A lot of them did it since. It was one of the first to really make an impact on the world. And the story of American independence is a story of bravery, courage, endurance, resilience, and self-reliance. But as much as we need to celebrate the founding of our nation, what I really want to celebrate today is the uniqueness of the people who created this American consciousness of which we are all a part, and the uniqueness of the gene pool from which the people of this country draw, and making them even unusual today. You see, this country is especially unique and especially strong because we are a country of immigrants. Now, we've heard this going on over and over. It's been repeated a lot. But I want you to take a moment to think what that really means. The people who are here, or at least your descendants, or no, your ancestors, let's go the right direction. We're immigrants to this country, unless any of you out there happen to be 100% Native American. Okay? I want you to think about what it takes to be an immigrant and realize that everyone who came to this country, in the end, these are their qualities. If you're an immigrant, these are your qualities. It takes a very special person to give up everything you have known and take on a whole new life. To give up what's comfortable and to embrace what's not comfortable in order to expand your life and hope for more. And this country became a gathering of those types of individuals. The ones for whom the qualities that I'm about to list were not quite as strong, stayed home. It's so much easier, and there are so many places where you grow up, right where you are. And there are people who never see more than 25 miles from home. It is comfortable, and it takes a special quality to be willing to give up all of that. No matter how bad it is, to give up what you have known in order to embrace the unknown. It takes courage to leave it all behind. It takes initiative, because there are those about think about it forever, but to actually do it, that takes real initiative. It takes self-reliance to decide to go to a new life. You've got to believe that you're going to be able to hold up, that you're going to be able to rely on yourself as you move through all kinds of things you're not familiar with. It takes resilience, because you're going to get knocked down. It takes optimism and hope. You've got to believe there's something better ahead of you. You're going to have to be a risk taker, because if you're unwilling to take a risk, you're never leaving home. You're going to have to be someone who's willing to risk a little in order to evolve into something more. And it's going to take strength, or you're not going to make it. And maybe lastly, but not lastly, but it's still important, you have to be someone who has the ability to think outside the box. You've got to have a tendency towards innovation, because you are trying something new. It's an amazing gene pool that we draw from. These individuals who were, every single one of them, an adventurer in some manner, are all gathered in one place and create a consciousness that we call the American consciousness. Now, in a previous time when I gave this explanation, I had a very good friend who spoke up and said, well, you left me out. You see, my ancestors didn't choose to come to this country, didn't choose to immigrate. They were brought here in slavery. And I admit, that's another path. But in the end, it's led to very much the same thing. Years and generations of adversity evolves a strength that is part of the American dream. It's part of the American consciousness. You add to the strength that adversity requires, and you add that to being right here in the midst of a gathered consciousness that admires adventure and courage and self-reliance and all these qualities I mentioned. And the bottom line is, I'm going to say without a doubt that the African Americans of today who did not choose to come to, whose ancestors did not choose to come to this country, and there are a number who did, or who are doing it right now, but those who came by that other path, they are infinitely more American than they are African. They are part of the consciousness, just the same way that the German American is infinitely more American than they are German. And as I said when Reg was here, the Scottish American is infinitely more American than Scottish. We have joined simply by being here. We have become part of a very special consciousness that draws these phenomenal qualities out of us. Are we losing a little after several generations down the road? I don't know. History will tell. But this is our lineage. A lineage of strength. Lineage of courage. Self-reliance, resilience, optimism and hope. Strength. And thinking outside the box. This is what America is, and we are America. However, I want to take it one step forward. As amazing as it is celebrating our national independence is, it couldn't have any of it happened without spiritual independence within each of us. That's what makes it all possible. A nation is made up of its people. And yes, the gathered consciousness affects us, but we affect the gathered consciousness. It goes both ways. And so I want to celebrate spiritual independence this day of each of us, because that's what's required to live in an independent country. What do I mean by spiritual independence? I mean self-reliance. Self-reliance, it's an ideal for probably every one of us. The courage to walk your own path and not necessarily follow the herd. Isn't there a little bit of a rebel in every single one of us? And if you're here at Unity, you definitely were not following the herd. You had the strength to decide what you believe. Spiritual independence is taking responsibility for yourself and your life, not blaming it on others, saying, this is my life. I don't care who did what to me. It's my life. I take responsibility for my life. That's the only way to be spiritually independent. It's between me and God. And spiritual independence is enjoying everyone around you. Interacting with all the people you can, but being dependent only on God. Remember, it's on the money, right? To this day, it still says, in God we trust, on the money, unless they've changed it recently and I haven't noticed. Why? Because spiritual independence is only possible when in God we trust, when we've got that inner connection. You see, people will let you down. There'll be some time in your life where someone close to you will betray you. There'll be another time in your life when someone will seem to have control over your good. And each time we've got to know they're not responsible for my life. That's between God and I. And when one door closes, another will open. Because my agreement is with God. And in the end, that's spiritual independence. When I was growing up, my parents bequeathed to me something that I consider very, very valuable. The belief that I could function independently. That I didn't need to depend on them or even family. Each one of us can stand on our own without any problem at all. That's not to say family won't be there for us. But we've lived all over the country, not necessarily right close to each other very often. And yet there were times when my parents helped me, and there were times when I helped my parents. My sister and I were not terribly close. We always lived far apart, but when she needed a place to stay, a long time ago, when her husband had to go get established in a new area before the family could join him, she came to live with me. So, in the end, we would always be there for each other. We were never that close through this life. We're a lot closer now because there's only the two of us left. There's nobody else to call. And yet each of us knew how to stand alone. We knew we had family. We knew we didn't depend on them. There's a huge difference. We knew we didn't need them. They were a luxury. All I need is God. All I need is that presence within me. I need to know that presence is with me. In the end, it takes spiritual independence to step out beyond herd thinking and to awaken as a Christ being. And if you're going to truly follow Jesus Christ, that will be required of you at some point. To step out beyond the masses, not to prove you are better than them, but to simply be independent enough to say, I'm going to go where most people don't want to go. Because my soul's calling me there. In John 16:32, Jesus said, you will leave me alone, and yet I am never alone because the Father is with me. And if you're going to follow in Jesus' footsteps, you're going to have to know this for yourself. I am never alone. You're going to leave me alone. He knew the disciples were just about to buckle. They were going to be freaked out over, this was just before arrest, crucifixion, and all that good stuff. He knew they were going to have problems. He said, you'll leave me alone, but I am never alone because the Father is with me. I'm never alone because God is with me. We're going to need to know that. That becomes the strength that allows us to handle anything that goes down and to go forward through any situation, no matter how taxing it may truly be. Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. The same Spirit that is in Jesus Christ is in me now. Do you know that? You say, really? Yeah, Jesus, in speaking to disciples, at one point said, when I come back, you won't ask me anything. He was expecting them to awaken to that Christ Spirit within them. That same Spirit flows through you and me. And through that higher Spirit that flows through all of us, we can handle anything. And in 1 John 4:4, he who is in you is greater than he who is in the world. By spiritual independence, I do not mean declaring, this personality is great and, I don't have to worry about anybody else. I'm not really saying that, because your personality is, think of a number of words. It's not much. I often say, this doesn't matter. But there is something within me that matters very, very much. He that is in you, the soul, the eternal being, the child of God that is inside of you, that is the part of you that is eternal, that was before you came into this life and will be after you leave it. The part of you that has lived for eons and has that perspective. The majesty inside of you is greater than anything the world can throw at you. So I want to talk about 4 practices for spiritual independence. And the first one is simply entitled, It's Just God and Me, and That's Okay. There is a point on everyone's spiritual path where you will have to figure that out. It's just God and me. And that's not such a bad thing. That's just fine. If you've been around long, you've heard me tell the story of when that happened for me. The idea that I think I was in my 30s at the time, and I'm going through and I'm realizing it was during my single years, and I'm realizing nobody really understands me. I'm here for everybody. I do whatever I do, et cetera, but nobody understands me. You know, the Eeyore in me came out. And I thought, slowly but surely, people that were friends, I realized, didn't really get me. But I had one really close friend, Dave, and we spent hours talking with one another about the deep spiritual things that were going on in our lives. And I knew, okay, I've got Dave, so I'm fine. And one day I realized Dave doesn't get me either. He's just being really nice. He's just really nice about it, you know, and understanding, but he doesn't totally get me any either. And I had this moment in which I thought, uh-oh, I really am on my own. I said, then it's really just God and me here. And first it was, it's just God and me. And then I thought about it for a moment, and I thought, no, it's God and me. That's all I need. I don't really need anything else. Everyone has to come to that realization eventually. You say, so I'm alienated from everyone else? Well, the interesting thing is this. I was feeling quite alienated from everyone else. And everyone had dropped away until it was down to just God and me. And then the moment I was able to say, you know, it's God and me, and I'm okay with that. I'm fine with that. I feel good about that. It was amazing. Everybody wanted to come out and play. Everybody would say, oh, Keir, you want to be part of this? And you want to... Everyone was trying to include me in their lives all of a sudden. You know, I'm going, where's this coming from? I don't need you. And I went, oh, that's the reason. There's nothing more attractive than someone who doesn't need you. Neediness is horribly, throws them away. Someone who is not needy, everyone immediately wants to share their lives with. And suddenly life became very rich because I didn't need them to fill an emptiness inside of me. They were just there to embellish, to enjoy. And that's the way it works. So the first step is to realize you don't need others to fill your need or your emptiness. God can do that. Then maybe you just start repeating, it's just God and me, and that's okay, until you feel confident in whatever it is you face. It's really okay. And then maybe you realize you're here to enjoy others, but you don't need them. I know we have mates and we think we need them. No, you want to enjoy them to the fullest. Two whole people can have the best relationship. halves in the end become quite a weight on each other because they need the other person to do certain things, to fill my needs here and fill my needs there. It's really quite a responsibility. And the last step is to take responsibility for your life. No one controls your life. No one has the power to ruin your life. They may have had your power to make you go through stuff you didn't want to go through, but they do not have the power to ruin your life. You and God can rebuild any time. When one door closes, another can open. Your life is between you and God. So here we go. That leads us to number 2, become independent. Look inside for what you need. We're always saying, I need to find someone so I no longer feel alone. I need to find this. I need something out there so I'll feel like I have enough. Well, be independent. Independent. Depend upon your inner, not on the outer. Refuse to believe that what you need comes from others. It comes from God. And if it comes from God backwards, if it comes from God, everyone out there can be a channel. And another channel will open. And think for yourself. Don't follow the crowd. That's part of being independent. That ought to almost come natural as Americans, but it doesn't always. We all want to be cool, so we all want to follow what the herd is doing. But independent thinking says you don't follow the crowd. You realize that in the end, what I decide to do, the only one that really matters is me, because I'm the one who's going to have to live with it most. So, in the end, you look and determine what is best for the good of the whole, and you do it from inside. You don't necessarily do what everyone tells you to do. What you eat, I'm not saying that you can't receive good advice. You can, but you better weigh it inside and decide whether inside you truly agree. Because in the end, you're the one responsible. So, determine what is best for the whole. People go, oh yeah, that's right. I have to make everybody happy but me. No, you're part of the whole. You're supposed to be happy too. So you do what's best. Sometimes it's best to let something go to someone else, and sometimes it's best to say, no, that one's mine. Okay? But you don't necessarily just follow the rules. I find it intriguing. We live in a society that says, in World War II, those people should have known not to do what Hitler said to do, because it was bad. But you live in America and you do exactly what we say you should do. Bottom line is, whatever you do, you weigh it inside. Independence. I'm responsible for my life. And that one ends up being, I answer to no one but God for my life. You need to know that. I don't care who says you will ruin their life if you don't do what they say, which is usually the leverage people try to use with you. You'll ruin my life if you don't. What? You fill in the blank. I answer to no one but God for my life. No one but God. You say, okay, so you're telling me to be a real rebel. You're telling me not to obey the rules of society. Now, please understand, this society has a perfect right to create consequences if you don't obey its rules. So, do know that is the way it goes. The same way, if you were going to not obey Hitler's instructions, you probably would have repercussions for that. Okay? So the bottom line is, yes, society has a right to set the rules, but never let the way everybody else thinks control your final decision. It's you. Inside. Think for yourself. The third practice is to be self-reliant. And what do I mean? Capital S on self. Depend upon your higher self to provide the assistance when you need it. Oh, I got to have someone help me do this. I've got to have someone help me do that. I've got to have someone, we can get in a state of thinking everyone else has to do things for us. And your first step should be, can I do it on my own? And when it gets really rough, you're going to want to be depending upon higher self to take over. That which is in you is greater than that which is in the world. So we're going to start depending on that which is in me. We're going to depend on higher self to take over. There was a period in my life when I took this very seriously. I went into my counselings, and bluntly, I don't think there's a counselor out there who thinks they have everybody's answers when they walk in there. If they do, they're a really lousy counselor. There's a sense of inadequacy. I'm not really up to this. And yet, you have to know that there's something within me that is up to this. People would come into counsel, and I'd sit in there, and I was working on this partnership with my higher self. I realized the majesty is in there, and I'm still mostly out here in this stupid personality named Bob. Someone once wanted to give me a spiritual name, and I said, no, Bob is my spiritual name because it keeps me humble. If you gave me a spiritual name, it wouldn't be, he's a stupid whatever. It would be something high and faluting, and I'd take pride in that. And I got enough pride already, I don't need it. Bob. So Bob would turn to his higher self and say, okay, this person sitting across from me, they need something. Do your work. Tell me when we're done. I'll entertain. I first learned it when I first came out in the ministry. I think as chaplains, you learn. You're not praying as yourself. If you were, you'd be horribly outclassed. When I first came out, here I am, I'm 23 years old, I look 15, and people are coming in to talk with me, and my senior minister, Dr. Neal, told me that you will pray with them before they leave. So they tell me these stories, and I think, oh my God. It's amazing what you hear when you're counseling. I had a major education all my life. But in any case, here are all these terrible situations, I'm thinking, yeah, right, there's no way out of this. Okay, we'll pray. I wouldn't say that to them, of course. But we'd pray, and they'd call me back. So many of them started calling me back just short time afterwards and saying, you are so powerful. I went out and got a job that afternoon. You are so powerful. I did this and I did that. And I'm thinking, those idiots believed me. And I finally had to say, wait a second, Bob. You aren't up to it. But there is something that's inside of you that is. Why don't you just recognize that higher self can handle lots of things you cannot handle? And so it is that as we go through our lives and we feel overwhelmed, it's time to turn over to higher self and say, soul, take over. God, take over. My higher self is the majesty that is in me, I'm going to need some help here. So figure something out. Let me know. That's independence. And then it's self-reliance. You rely on that higher self. Well, this leads us to the final step. Practice being alone, but not lonely. What are we talking about? Independence. Practice being alone, but not lonely. I've told it over and over, but it's the only way to really get this one across, and it is the story of when I got that. We've all had our times when we get something. And during my single years in Fort Pierce, I spent many a Friday night sitting in my yellow overstuffed chair looking out the front picture window at the traffic driving by on Sunrise Boulevard and thinking, wow, my job is to be here for everybody, and Friday night and I'm here alone. You can almost hear Eeyore going right to town, huh? I'm here all by myself. No one cares about me. And then I had one Friday night where all day I had been counseling. I had seen people from beginning to end, and I sat down in that little yellow chair. I looked out that window at the traffic passing on Sunrise Boulevard, and I said, boy, it feels good to be alone. And bells went off big time. And I went, Bob, this is exactly the same feeling you have on other Friday nights. It's just tonight you like it. The rest of the time you hated it. It's really got to do with how you've chosen to feel about it. I am never alone, for the Father is with me. You want to practice being alone and feel the strength that comes from within. I'm alone, not lonely. I'm never alone, for the Father is with me. I, in my life, has had the extreme privilege of having extended time by myself. I did it enough in my younger years. I don't feel I need to do it now. But I don't know how many summers I spent out there on that property. That was back when nobody lived out there. Nobody did. So consequently, it was 4 to 6 weeks in retreat. And in retreat, you chop wood and carry water, right? So I did construction and worked on the house and did all kinds of things like that. But there's something amazingly strengthening about being alone. And after 6 weeks, you come back to society very, very strong. It takes them a couple of months to kick it out of you. But having that moment in which you know you are alone with God, which is not alone, that is strengthening. And that in the end will give you the strength to face whatever it is you need to face. We are all here together, and we support one another, and that is wonderful. But we're also all here alone. And you have a power within you that will be with you no matter what. You are never alone. For the Father is always with you. And because of that, you can handle anything the world wants to throw at you. That which is in you is greater than that which is in the world. So let's close our eyes. Father, God, Spirit within, closer than hands and feet, that which knows everything about me and still loves me intensely. Thank you for being my constant companion through this life. Thank you for opening the doors before me. Thank you for showing me my way. Thank you for being my God. My partner.